All right, welcome to the Diplomats. It's just me and Hand. He wanted to do a special episode called Ed's Advice Column, which is really not a good idea to listen to my advice on anything, but that's what he wanted. He sent me a bunch of slides, I think two of which are from a game we played together. But, Hand, I'm going to turn it over to you and tell the viewers and listeners what you want to do with this thing tonight.
Um, well, first of all, I can't believe my name is misspelled again. I don't know why it keeps going back to that, but I guess it's a tradition at this point.
You can just right click it and go rename.
Okay.
But anyways, while Hand's doing that,
Yeah.
I'll set the backstory for this, right? Which is, uh, I think I've made a lobbying effort for Hand to play some virtual games because I found that uh, I've really enjoyed them. I've liked them. I've had a measure of success with them, and he's been involved over the summer. I think he started in the Summer Classic. I think this is his first game that we're
Yeah.
looking at, and has continued to play. With some really good results and some struggling as well. And so I'm here.
I haven't had any really great results. And you're right. My first game was with you. Uh, in fact, it's been a very humbling experience. I will say, 24-hour press online play came to me very naturally. In fact, I was looking back at my original games, which were admittedly anonymous, just kind of public backstabber games, and I think I soloed my first 4 or 5 of them. It came to me naturally. I just learned by reading about the game, and virtual really hasn't been that way. It's been really difficult for me, and I kind of think it was the other way around for you. I mean, it seems like you jumped in and really had a lot of success pretty fast. I thought we'd like kind of change our dynamic around, and I'd interview you here and get your advice, and maybe just record it. And this could be helpful for other people who are online players who maybe want to jump into virtual, because it's really is a different game, it, and it's a difficult adjustment. I'm also happy you want to talk to me because I've noticed I've actually sought advice from quite a few other virtual players with varying results from I think Umble told me I can't teach what I do. Ask Ed. Uh, for instance, I think I talked to Farron after our game, and she sent me back, "Thanks for reaching out." Period.
Wow.
Uh, yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Morgante keeps promising to coach me, but it never seems to happen. Um,
So
so
I'm your fourth choice, but that's okay.
no, I've been trying to get you busy. I've been trying to get you to talk to me too, and
It's true.
I'm glad that we're doing this. So I kind of have a list of some of my issues here, uh, and the first one, it doesn't actually relate to this first slide, which I'll get to on my second question. But I think my biggest question and this is probably my number one problem is that when I'm playing in a 24-hour press game, right? 1901 is really when I talk to every single person on the board and I really try to find who I can work with, right? Who is someone who's going to play in a style uh, that I vibe with, to put it colloquially. And due to the fact that people have pre-existing relationships because it's a small community and more so the time constraints, I found that I really end up just stuck with the first person I talk to. And then layered onto that problem is that it seems like it's pretty ritualized which power you talk to first. Um,
Yeah,
oh,
it's a big problem. Austria always talks to Italy first. Russia always talks to Turkey first, and then if you're in the West, it's sort of this popularity contest. Which two powers will talk first, and which is going to be odd man out?
right. So how do you deal with that? I mean, there is the obvious of once you get to know people, you kind of jump on them, but it's funny because like my most successful game was my last one, and I ended up allied with your friend Liam. Um, and I was almost lucky that he very stupidly stabbed me early, which allowed me to shift to a better ally. um, in a strange way, it worked out quite well, but yeah, how do you do that? How do you go? How do you kind of select who you want to work with outside of a pre-existing relationship? Or
So for me, it's a total feel thing, right? And I have an advantage, right, which is I'm literally paid. How I make my living is to evaluate people and witnesses, right off the bat. And so I have a pretty good internal method of figuring out who I can click with and who I can't. And I've said this on Deadline News, and I say this to anyone who asks, which is I make a real effort to get to know the person and not talk about plans right away, because the people who want to talk about plans right away I find disingenuous, because in my own head I think that they'll be talking about plans with other people right away, and that plan would be me. But I feel like if I can get to know them a little better, um, and get them to talk about their lives, it's a little bit of a different strategy than most, and B, I seem more trustworthy. Many times I am, but also I just get a good read for how comfortable that person is talking about themselves. And I find that the more comfortable they are talking about themselves, the more likely they would be a good ally.
right, but then how do you deal with the time constraint then? I mean, do you use the kind of general board chat to start feeling people out as early as possible, or uh
Well, I don't text chat with people, but uh, so
so
there are
you
things that I've developed, right, which is I don't do well. I mean, I've had good results, but it's harder for me to play Russia or Italy, precisely because I have to talk to somebody in the West, and more people as Russia than Italy. But
yeah.
if I am in the East, if I'm Austria, Turkey, or Russia, or Austria, Turkey, I only have three people to talk to for sure, and I'm going to sacrifice to some extent relationships with the across the board to build better relationships in my corner. And so, unlike press, I'm going to jettison the idea that I can talk to everybody right off the bat. That's difficult for people, and sometimes that's a disadvantage mid game. But my game is purely my best games. Every single one are uh, are good tempo from the beginning through the mid game. And if I have that good tempo, then I can deal with the other side of the board, I think, more easily.
So I mean, so just prioritize, like have a short list of who you need to talk to and make sure that you talk to them all, but don't try to be everywhere.
I don't
Yeah.
try to be everywhere. And the other thing is, like, I really, uh, for me, the West is a guessing game. Um, and so, my moves for the most part are pretty standard in spring 1901. Um, I'm rarely going to do something out of the ordinary, and I'm really just trying to spend the whole 1901, the whole 30-minute period, developing relationships to win the popularity contest. But in the East, you have to talk to people multiple times in spring 1901 and fall 1901. Like, just because you talk to Austria, let's say you're Austria, just because you talk to Italy for 5 minutes to start, you better get there after they talk to everybody. Uh, multiple conversations with people in your corner to me are uh, of critical importance.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And I mean, it still leaves me wondering a little bit though, how you don't get stuck with the first person you talk to.
You have to. Well, look. Here's the way I look at it, which is, I think Austria and Italy tend to break off for obvious reasons because conflict there is right off the bat is sort of disruptive, and they have an interest in talking to each other. And frankly, my thinking of Austria and Italy is 1901's a dumb time for them to fight, anyways. Uh,
Yes.
but I'm never sanguine that Russia Turkey is going to make it in the long run.
Mhm.
And so all I really need to do is take care of my main issue and then start working with Russia or Turkey. And now, if I have a good relationship with either one of them, it's a different story. But if it's a tabula rasa for who they are, I start laying the groundwork for what I need in '01, and develop it from there. I think it's kind of important. I I say tempo is a big part of my game, but uh, it's kind of important for me to have credibility with everyone in my corner for as long as possible, until I have to commit one way or the other, because I want to see how it sort of plays out. So I've done it, but if I agree to a Galicia bounce, 9 times out of 10 we're going to bounce in Galicia. Uh, that's sort of the way I play. I'm
Yeah.
not going to lie to get to the exception to that, and I'm not giving away the tricks, but the hardest thing is if you're Russia or Turkey and you make an agreement not to bounce in the black. Uh, I'm very much tempted to always take the black at the expense of the relationship. I don't always do it. Sometimes I don't, but uh, that's one where if someone doesn't want to bounce in the black, I have to think long and hard about whether I should still move to the black because I'm not necessarily trusting of the other person.
Right. I mean, that all does make sense in the sense to, I mean, I play the same way, especially in virtual. I mean, the one exception, for instance, if I was playing 24-hour deadlines, right? If I'm going to lie about going to Galicia, because you have a long time to plot with people, right? So you can actually get a plan together where someone is taken out just surgically, right? And everybody lies to them. Like I remember playing in season 3, Poser Tom, had he tried to get us all to attack, France, and he was like had no centers, was down Munich, within the first year, just completely taken apart. But yeah, it doesn't seem like that's possible, so there really is no reason to lie about minor moves. But I kind of want to like more talk about like the nitty gritty and like the technical
Yeah,
side of virtual. Like so, like let's talk about the West because I think I hadn't thought about this way, but the way you put it is interesting because the East is more complicated, but the kind of three-way relationship uh, is almost more interesting in virtual in the West in the sense that, like you said, right? It's this like popularity contest. It's who grabs whom. And one thing I've noticed in virtual is that there seems to be two kind of tactics that people take, which is to really quickly and aggressively grab someone. So I say the
that's the
second,
Fair and Jane method.
right? It's like Ed, come talk right now. Karthik did the same thing. It was really amusing. He was down to like one center, and he somehow managed to talk to my ally Russia for like almost the entire time, while but who was too polite to get out of the room with him. Um, yes, and Farron's really good at running the clock too. But that's one way, and it does actually seem to work. Though I feel like when it's been done to me, I kind of take umbrage at it. And then the other way that I've seen, for instance, Morgante do quite a bit more is to say, "I'm going to my room. If anyone wants to talk, come see me." And then the people who want to talk come see you. What and perhaps there's other ways that I'm missing here. What do you find like more effective, particularly let's say like in that kind of triadic relationship in the beginning, and then also in general? Um, how do you get, because it's there's this attentional economy, right? And you're trying to how do you make sure that you're the one who gets in there and gets that like advantage of being the first one to talk?
Okay, so I don't worry about that. I mean, I
Okay.
worry about it in the West, but I don't worry that maybe I wasn't talked to first. But if I'm not being talked to first and they're talking a long time, like, and by long time I mean more than 5 minutes. If there's a discussion more than 5 minutes and I'm sitting by myself, let's say I'm Germany, and England and France are talking for more than 5 minutes, and I start to worry. So what I really try to do is essentially come up with my pitch to either why, even though they talk in a room for 5 minutes, why I'm the better option. I don't have, like what you just said. Uh, it's not in my personality, and these may be personality flaws to do either of the things that you suggested. One is I rarely ask to talk to someone first. Uh, that's not a fear of rejection. It's just more of a perception in my mind that it appears desperate. And
Hmm.
the other, I'm going to be in a room. Whoever wants to talk to me can come talk to me. I don't like to do that for the flip reason, which is uh, that's too confident for me. I'm not that kind of person, and I
Mhm.
think if I said that, like I'd be in the room alone for a while, and I don't want that rejection. And so what I tend to do is just hang out and hope someone asks to talk to me first. Uh, Sometimes they do because I've got a pretty good reputation as an alliance player, particularly in the beginning. But if they don't do it, I just sort of deal with it by coming up with the pitch. I just can't make myself be aggressive, and I don't want to put myself. I don't play diplomacy to feel bad about myself, so I don't want to do that either.
I mean, it's a hard game not to feel bad about yourself, in, to be honest. But yeah, that's interesting you say that. I've got to say, just having as I gain a little more experience, I've actually, I suppose it does really boil down to also your disposition. I've had a lot more luck with the I'm going to go sit in my room, because it also gives me time to think and be quiet for a second and try to draw things out. But
The other thing is, like in my experience, right? Uh, you have to measure who's talking to who and what your knowledge of their experience is.
Mhm.
The more experienced player is not going to have a problem talking to someone second and developing a plan with you. Period. The
Yeah.
less experienced player is going to feel more insecure and is going to feel the psychological need to make plans right away.
Mhm.
And uh, that's okay. Because if I have to talk to anyone second, I understand, just have to give that person a better psychological case for me. That's not usually that difficult. And with an experienced player, I tend to think experienced players want more than anything else reliability. Uh, and they don't like uh, unreliable allies. And so I know how to pitch it to experienced players and inexperienced players. It just depends on the situation.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Actually, it's funny. I we'll talk about him a little later, but Tom DeGaff, I believe, I don't, I might be getting his last name wrong.
I think
Um,
it's De Grief, but I don't know. He's Dutch, right? So I don't know how
okay,
to pronounce.
perfect. If his name was De Grief, perfect. But the after a pretty acrimonious alliance with him, I went back and kind of asked him what I could do better, and he gave me very similar advice. And I think that's one of my parts of my game that's not translating, is that um, I love plans, and I love especially like complex multi-part plans. And in online play, that's one thing I really love is an ally who loves to, from the very beginning, be drawing sandboxes, multi-part plans, controlling the information. How are we going to juke this guy out of this territory, like, and take people down very fast? And I'm starting to realize that I really, that a more humble approach really is better in virtual. Like he gave me the same advice. He said, "Don't begin with a plan." Um, you know,
Well,
uh,
like I mean, just looking at the map here, right? Which is, I will tell you what happened in my head. Here were the various things. I really wanted to work with you, just because
mhm,
I knew it was your first virtual game, and I wanted to give you a good experience. And you were very excited, and I didn't want to damper your enthusiasm in any way, shape, or form. And you wanted to move to Budapest here. Uh, I would have probably, in a regular person game, not wanted you to move to Venice in spring, which you did. But fine, I trusted you. I wanted you to have a good experience. I wanted to convey that. Your moving to Budapest was entirely, sort of your idea. And my thinking about it at the time really was, I'm not understanding why you want to go there. I mean, I've seen the move before. You seem very enthusiastic about it, so I was just going to roll with you on it, or roll with you with it. But I don't think at this first game you did a great job of. I'm not as tactically adept as you,
yeah.
although I think I've got a really good social game. Uh,
Mhm.
like of you explaining to me why you wanted to do this plan and where we were going to go forward from it, and there wasn't a lot of time. And I think because you had a shorthand with me, you trusted me. At the same time, it it you didn't spend a lot of time with me in early, sort of explaining to me what it was, and I was just like, I'm just gonna have a good game with hand, so we're gonna go forward, and that was
Yeah.
sort of my thinking.
Well, I mean, I can like address that, and this can actually like lead me into kind of my second question. So actually, often with me is I start off just having a good time, and then get kind of increasingly agitated.
Right? Yeah, I agree.
But
Correct. You've analyzed yourself correctly.
yeah. So actually, I've never done this opening before. This is actually a Stitches opening. And the idea here is, and I'm sure that someone else has done it too. Uh, this is actually isn't entirely my style. Like most of my weird AI openings, like the Acid Lepanto, involve like a more convincing fake attack on Austria, to kind of wedge the opponents apart. This is more of a pure trusting one. The thing that throws a wrench here is that you actually convinced Russia to give you Galicia because Russia was a newer player. So the idea here is more like, often this happens to me is I'm overthinking my opponents as if they are these like tactical geniuses, right? So the idea here normally would be that you would go to Bohemia and then build the army, right? And then we have three armies going against Russia. It's a very anti-Russian opening. Um, if you see what I mean,
Yeah.
it's assuming the move to Galicia. So in a way, it's funny when sometimes when things are too easy, that can put stress on an alliance. Whereas if like you have a more intense fight against a opposing alliance, it's easier to stay together. It's funny. Um, but this does lead me to my next question, and perhaps I'm misinterpreting what happened here, which is, and I think we've already kind of touched on it, is one of my problems in virtual is, again, in online play, I really like to have a kind of pure alliance, right? Where you are, for instance, if a third power comes and says something to me, I repeat it to you, and then we compare notes on what they said, and then we try to control what they believe about us,
Right.
which is not really feasible, I think, in virtual play. But then like kind of a little bit counterintuitively too, I almost find like alliances, at least so far as I've seen in virtual, unless it's like the kind of horse trading variety, you can't. People are always going to work kind of geopolitically against you, even your primary ally, right? So, and this might have just been the heat of the moment, but part of what I started sensing, for instance, in this slide right here, which honestly, right, so far in this slide, we're doing really well, I think, as an alliance. Like I can climb up towards Russia, we could smash Russia. Um, but if you recall, right, so Matthew Krill was Turkey,
Right.
uh, and you were very chummy with them from the beginning. You know, which is there's nothing wrong with that. But like I'm new, so I'm kind of wondering. And then also Russia was a very, very new and pliable player who wasn't that tactically sound, as you can see, kind of from this move. Um, and so our plan was that we, you know, for me, at least coming from this also might be a difference. So for me, you know, coming from like the Nexus world, right? You know, it doesn't always happen this way, but usually you want to ally with the newer player, right? And you want to target the good players, right? So I thought that you were here. I thought we were going to go against Turkey as the bigger threat, right? Matthew Krul is experienced, good player. You know, you don't want to let Turkey out of the box. Let's go after him. And instead, you know, you didn't take that support. We don't have the other moves here, but you were actually already trying to talk me also into an Italy, Austria, Turkish alliance, which to my mind it just seems like Austria wanting Turkey and Italy to fight while they take the gains. Which honestly, you know, and we can level with each other. That's like perfectly good strategy. I might do the same and some, but but like, how do you? I mean, like, am I missing? Am I being too judgmental? Like, is that just my narrow experience, or is this something that I should take to heart? That like I can't really expect people not to
I
try
think
to.
it was okay. So I think you were uh, burdened by my diplomatic style and goodwill because um, I have sometimes, and particularly with this Russian player, have difficulty with some newer players who are hesitant to want to work with me, and they're very cagey from the get go. So newer players, right, are they're more afraid of making a mistake in my mind than they are about uh, making the best moves. And so I knew that my relationship with you, I had a better relationship with you than you did with either Russia or Turkey, particularly Turkey. And I knew I had a better relationship with Turkey than anyone else did. And then throw in a third variable, which is my preference in the East is always to have three for a while because I think that's the best way of getting over the line. Um, Usually, I don't like to do it with turkey. I typically like to do an air, but
Right.
but I know Matthew Krill is an extremely honest, reliable player, and had you not been Italy, I probably would have just teamed up on an AT with him. So you were right to sense because I was trying to convince you. Uh, I was trying to convince you to work a bit with Matt. I
But
didn't
I
take
don't believe
Bulgaria here, which I knew I could have.
what is Italy supposed to do in a Turkish anyway?
Well, I
Uh,
wasn't worried about
so
you, right? I was
basically, this is a very you're very slowly coming around to the fact that yes, you know, interpretation was perhaps not entirely incorrect. Yeah.
no. I agree that you probably had some cause to be worried,
Yeah.
but uh, I would have valued my relationship with you over Crow because I really was intent on giving you a good game. Um,
Hmm.
but I agree. Now I maybe I didn't think the moves correctly, so I assumed Russia had worked something out with Turkey. I didn't know that Sev would go. I don't know. Like I really just don't know what's happening here. I can't
Yeah.
remember, but I know that I was hesitant to strike Matt because I
Yes.
knew he's a valuable person to me personally.
Right. But see, and herein lies the difference, though, right?
Right.
Because frankly, in Nexus, you could love Matt, and you could be like, I love this guy, but he is good, so he has to die. Right. What you want is you want to keep the weaker players around, and because they're easier to take down later. But I mean, I think just to like kind of circle around to the teaching point here is I think we can say that this is a difference, right? You can't expect, like in virtual play, you can expect people to intentionally ally with stronger players who are known quantities, basically.
For me, that's
Yeah.
always my top priority.
Yeah. That's a good thing to learn. Yeah.
Uh, you know, uh, so yeah, I guess that's where I come from, but uh, because I just didn't have time to figure out if Russia would do do things the way I would have preferred.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that this developed uh, like right here because you were mad with me, and the way I tried to get out of it was to say we can all work together, and I think you're getting your point to me across, which is like how are we getting together without me being a target? And
Yeah.
I didn't probably have a great answer for that, right? Because if he builds armies, he's going to upset me, and if he builds fleets, he's going to upset you.
Yes.
Probably going to build fleets. So, so I,
Also, just for the record, your beloved honest Matthew Krill here was like promising me an IT and et cetera, of course.
well,
But
right, yeah, no, but like, well, just like I said, when people start talking plans,
yeah, of
their plans are always going to be, what works with that player.
course.
So, you have to be able to snuff that out.
Why don't we go to the next slide and see the sad outcome of my first game? Yeah,
Uh,
die. Hard to watch.
Well, if I didn't have an okay outcome at the end, this would be harder to watch. But
Yes.
here what you're sort of seeing is because of what we just looked at, and me causing sort of mistrust with you. I had reached a conclusion that the only way to satiate you was to attack Turkey. That was the only way really forward.
Yes.
Uh, and you didn't believe that at the time. That was a failure of my diplomatic strategy to
Well,
on that
I'll
point.
tell you, I've thought about this a lot because I actually have a lot of regret for this. I will say, like, part of me, my dissatisfaction with allies and virtual has also led me to realize that you are a much better ally than I had thought, right? Because, like I told you, I'm used to this hyper communicative information control style, right? So I didn't really realize how good I had it in my first game, if that makes sense.
Right.
I was like, why is he doing like these subtle things against me? Does he not see that I see it? But that is honestly just to be expected, I think, for most people, maybe not all. Um, but so I mean, what happened here to me, and I think what I made the same mistake following what I said is that the reason, I mean, there's two reasons why I ended up stabbing you here. One is that Matthew Curl has a very, very calming, gentle voice
He
that is
does.
also hypnotic, and I just love listening to him. And he
I
just kind of
agree.
whispers in my ear, like you can see he's like supporting himself. He's act very neutral move, very nice on his part. So he was really promising me the world, which in retrospect was very dumb, and it shows the power of the voice, over text. But also, so here I remember very clearly because you said you came to me very, and also I've realized like to kind of understand that people get very. I'm strangely enough over text I'm actually more intense. I think in person I'm actually not that aggressive of a person, right? So people are, and I've noticed this is the point in the game where everyone's starting to get really agitated. Like I said, like more talking, very rapid fire. So I remember you coming and saying, "I'm taking Budapest back." Like now, it was like a command. And again, because like I was like, but because I'm so attached to my plan, right? I'm like, well, why are you now? You're turning back on the plan. Um, so
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I'm like, look at the green in Austria. I mean, I'm
yeah,
giving you a lot of trust, and I'm not feeling the love on the other side, a hundred
yeah,
percent. And so I was just like,
yeah.
you
No,
know,
but it was a mistake, and I shouldn't have stabbed here. Like if you look at the board, yes, you moving back to Budapest isn't. See, this is my problem. I'm mistaking what isn't optimal with betrayal almost, right? So I see you wanting to move back to Budapest. I'm like, look, we have this crushing position against the East. Like we can take them out so fast right now. Why are you moving your armies back? You know, but if you look at the board, this was a huge mistake. If I just moved on to we like look at the position we have. If I had just been accepted, okay, he needs some security, time's moving fast, he doesn't have the time to maybe like sit in the sandbox and look at what the plan is, uh like just be more empathetic and be like, if it makes you feel better, go back to Budapest and not immediately think that you have an ulterior counter plan against me, because I should have taken Bulgaria here. um and for the record, I will say, like you said, this did, we ended up each on 4, and we actually ended up, we didn't have the best outcome, but we ended up working pretty well
we hugged
together.
it out.
Yeah.
We
Uh,
hugged it. We hugged it out.
yeah.
I mean, like ultimately, all things like this come from breakdowns in communication. Breakdowns in communication in mine come from breakdowns in trust, and breakdowns in trust come from differential priorities. Um, and I don't blame you for stabbing me. I was hurt because I was like, I'm not. It was a one daughter, right? Because you would have, you know,
Yes.
but it's like okay. I felt personally a bit wounded, but
Yeah.
I'll get over that, right? And I feel like what you didn't know about me at that point, but sort of learned is, all in 2020, I was only eliminated in one game virtually,
Yes.
and that's where I suicided. I'm really hard to get out. Like I'm really hard to eliminate, and I'm a very good scrambler. Um, uh, but also, I noticed this in your other game when you played Italy with Liam, in which you did a really good job. This proved in my mind that Austria and Italy shouldn't fight right away. But you fought with Liam in your other game as Italy and came out ahead, and he's the
Well,
one who drew.
we'll get back to that though, because that was complete. He stabbed me,
He did. He drew first blood, but it ended up being.
and not only that. Well, let's get to that when we get to that game, because I do want to talk about that, because it's actually interesting if you look at the board. It's one of those funny things. If you look at the board of those two games, you would think that similar things are going on, but it was an entirely different situation. It could be entirely different.
But this game to scramble, I bled out a ton of credibility. Matt Krill and I, really got affected in the game, relationship wise. Then later,
You guys deserve it for plotting against me.
then Klaus as Germany and I, you know, went crosswise. Uh, so I mean, let me just say this: it's much better to be ahead than it is to be behind.
Right. I will also actually, I hadn't thought about talking to you about this, but what I really was amazed about you in this game is your ability to rally the board. Because right here with the stab, you would think I go up quite a lot. I think I had 8.
Yeah.
I even went immediately to Germany, who admittedly like moved into very good position here. I wonder how he like, thought to do that. Probably working with Russia, maybe, I don't know. But in regardless, I knew I was screwed the second I stabbed this because I looked up and you were sitting in a room with everyone on the board except me. Um, so what does, how do you do that? But also like, what does one do in that situation? Like, should I have jumped in there and started like throwing a tantrum, or, what do you do if you suddenly go up and you find yourself alone and everyone else is talking? Um,
So I learned this the way you did, uh, right? Which is my very first virtual game. I used Nicolas Sage, former world champion, to stab Eddie Bersan. Probably the legend of diplomacy. Probably played more games than anyone else. I stabbed Eddie with Nikolai's help. Went up, and then I found myself on the receiving end of everybody else against me after I did that, including Nicola, who had just helped. And that was so. Now when I stab, right, I have to know that I have, unless I think I'm going to get a solo, and you were too far away from that.
yes.
Uh, I have to know that I have the support of somebody else for sure, and
Yeah.
not just a guess.
Mm,
And what I'm pretty good at is, not to be repetitive, what I get paid to do is to make a case. So right now, you gave me the opportunity to make a case against you. And the best way to make a case against somebody is not what most people do, in my mind, particularly in virtual, which is you have to help me, blah, blah, blah. It's my game is over. I will help everybody get richer. A rising tide will lift all boats, and I don't care about my own personal position. Now, that's not true, but
yes.
it comes across very credibly to people when you say something like that. And it does allow for a bit of a rallying.
Mm, yeah. Ah,
Because immediately here, Germany worried about you because Germany's racing for the board top.
yes. Yeah, Germany really took me by surprise with this move because, again, I made the same, you know what? I made the same mistake here because I've been very, very enamored of Italy Germany alliances lately. I don't know if you were looking at watching the last Nexus season, but there was that non cooperative 17-17 between MaxVax and Kiwi.
No, I didn't watch.
Oh, well, there was a 17-17 and they were actually fighting and got to it, which really got me curious. And I do, and it made, I'm actually convinced that Italy and Germany, if you don't just do a chase the leader thing, which I'm actually starting to understand is more common also in virtual, the chase the leader early kind of game style, but that it's so powerful. You can expand faster in almost any kind of two-way cooperative thing. So I got too enamored of that, and of course Klaus just, I talked to him from 1901. I was like, listen, I have this theory about Italy and Germany. you know we're not gonna fight, we're gonna just rock this board if everything goes right. um and he says yes, 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 and of course immediately when I'm even close to his number, he tries to take me down. Of course, he also had Wardy care bearing very, very hard in this game, uh, but yeah, so that was a big mistake.
Wardy's playing England. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wardy management. I mean, learning about different players, right? I mean, Wardy. I've yet to crack his code. I would love to work with the guy, but we haven't been able to do it yet.
I like him quite a bit. I like his voices that he makes, and he's very funny. I've also heard one of the players I've heard very contradictory things about him. Um, in fact, I heard someone was telling me that he always stabs, and which I found amusing because the only game we played in, I think we all spent the entire game taunting him because he could have easily. But yeah, in any case, we're kind of going out in the weeds there. But I think we've learned kind of. I think that's I think actually I even learned more than I thought I would from talking about this, so I'm glad we did. Um,
You
okay,
pulled
so
up this slide. I don't know this game, I don't think.
this was a game. So basically, I'm playing Russia here. I forgot who was playing Turkey, um, and JJ was playing Italy, and Morgante was playing France. Morgante ends up topping this board. Honestly, I kind of gave him the top in some ways, in this just in the sense that I didn't let JJ walk
Okay,
it.
I think I remember watching this game. I think Farron might have been Germany or England.
Farron was Austria.
Austria.
So there's actually, I mean, I had a pretty interesting opening with Turkey here, and I actually wanted to work with Turkey, but he ended up kind of getting very, very nervous and uh, like just, it's one of those situations where he just kind of became impossible to save, and I had to kind of reorient. JJ was someone who he does like to text, which I really like. I don't understand why people are so enamored with speech outside of certain contexts, in the sense that I think it's a huge advantage when people can't see who you're talking to. Um, However, again, I'm beginning to approach this with a certain humility and realize that I can't impose that belief on people, and that most people don't feel comfortable with the text communication.
Well,
Um,
I don't mind texting, and I do, but for people newer to virtual, I'd give them two tips. First, always when you're talking to someone, listen for the keyboard on the other end.
yes,
And second, learn to see if people have turned off their sound notifications uh, when incoming texts come in. And you have a real good idea of how distracted the player is that you're talking to based on keyboard sounds and sound notifications on Discord, which are
yeah,
usually big uh, tells for me on
yeah.
what's going on.
No, so actually, so I learned this game, right? Because JJ was an interesting person to work with.
I love JJ, by the way. Love him.
Oh, I do too. So the reason why I'm showing this slide first, well, actually, just to kind of circle back to what you just said, and then I want to continue. Also, wear earphones and make sure that people can't hear your typing. It is a good is a good kind of lesson that I'm learning from what you just said. Which I also did learn from this game. So JJ, I actually wanted to show this slide first because I wanted to show how good of an ally he was for me. And in a lot of ways, my outcome in this game would have been a lot better, except I played this overnight. So I started at midnight, and
Right.
I just started slipping very hard. I just don't have the endurance some of these guys have, and I just started like making a lot of mistakes. I have a slide that shows a funnier one later on, but I actually wanted this because I like to I'm talking a lot of most of what I'm talking about is about my allies. Those are the people I find myself more interested in.
Sure.
Uh, and I feel like I don't want to be like overly critical, because like what I'm trying to learn is like what went wrong. So I kind of like same thing with the pictures of our alliance. I want to show like the power and how well things were as well, how well things went as well, right? So I mean, if you look at it, like we're just dismembering Farron here. It's a beautiful move. I do get like an unexpected disband here, but it worked out quite well for me. Well, not a disband, but I mean, I do lose Romania.
Right.
Uh, but
Well,
yeah,
you're still +1.
exactly. I'm still +1, and also, I mean, it's just the most clinical possible just collapse of Austria possible, right? JJ, brilliant convoy to Albania. Somehow this was him. I don't even he somehow got Germany to support him into Trieste. Um, and so it really was a nice moment. And again, it showed like just how good our cooperation was. Texting really helped in our relationship too, because for instance, Farron is a at least in my experience with her, and actually she was a very truthful player. I don't want to just dump on people. and I think like it could work out in a different context. But definitely someone who runs the clock, who would say, you know, Russia, Italy, come talk, and then you can't get away. But so in that sense, me and JJ would kind of text and be like, there she goes again, you know, lecturing us, you know, and just kind of say yes, ma'am, while plotting against her. So
Well,
that's
I find her to be, you know, she and I have, except for recent times, we butted heads for over a year, and I think that that is, from my view, she probably has a different view of it. To be fair to her, is my view of it is that she's an extremely reliable ally so long as everything's a 55-45 or 60-40 negotiation in her favor. And
yes.
I like I bristle at that in some ways. So we just haven't hit it off. And I think she views me to be totally unreliable. And it all really started from the very first game we played together when I was Italy, and I'm not kidding. She ended up in Venice in fall 1901, um, and that's a little unusual. And I've just never got over it. And I
Yeah.
really would like to work with her in a collaborative way down the road.
Yeah, I mean, she did strike me as a very truthful ally, and you know, it's funny. I didn't know we were going to get this personal in this podcast, but you know, I guess diplomats has always been a little raw, so why not? I think like our problem that might be just, you know, I've only played with her once. I have a lot of respect for her, but she's has a kind of a very acute bullshit-o-meter, and she doesn't like kind of she doesn't like just kind of moves that might be construed as silly, or that are clearly just meant to destabilize the board, right? So I started out this game by intentionally letting Turkey into the Black Sea. Um, and I was at the same time trying to sandbag her into thinking I had never played before. Not never, but was very newer than I was. Um, and honestly, to her credit, it worked on her, but I don't think she ever really believed me. I think her bullshit meter was just, you know, in red alert mode the whole game. Uh,
She's
but
good, and talk about a good scrambler. Farron's a very good scrambler. She's
yeah,
always good at giving options to people.
but I will say though, I do think it's like a bit of what when I was saying, like it might have been a bit of her weakness. It's like how do you deal with a completely unexpected situation, you know?